Hello everyone, how you guys doing? Hopefully you're having a wonderful day, and we are back again with another PWCC/Fanatics weekly review where I go through the top 100 soccer items auctioned off this week. As always, if you enjoy the weekly reviews, do make sure to leave a like, helps me, helps the channel. With that said, let's go ahead and get on over. So starting off the weekly here, the price point to get in is $1.50. We start with a 65 sticker Verlag Eusebio and a PSA 8, always a photogenic one right there. A Musiala sticker auto from 22, going for 156, and a Renaissance going for 156 of Holland and a PSA 10. Following that, we have a Holland Leaf auto, a Jadon Sancho PSA 10. Initially, whenever I was going through here, I thought that was a fair price, or at least a good price for Jadon Sancho Kaboom. We'll come to see in a second. I guess it's par for the course. A 78 Platini and a PSA 9, really high grade there. Pop one of one and higher, goes for 156. Then we have Ansu Fati right above, sort of in reference to the Jadon Sancho comment. Could take your pick between the two, I guess. We have a 76 Saeta Rivellino along with a dual auto, a Sergio Aguero auto that I haven't seen too much of. That's not one I have in the memory bank. I respect it though. You know, it's at least an autograph, right? The Erling Haaland, honestly, by today's prospect standards, not bad. I mean, it looks egregious, but it's actually some effort. The Sergio Aguero looks really nice. Keeping it moving, we have a 37 Silvio Piola here in a PSA 4 that goes for 168. At 2023, one of one Verts that went for nearly 200. To me, this seemed, at least reasonably high, from the sense that I know Verts is a prospect, but at the same time, this is a Topps Gold UCC/Whip. I don't know if anyone has a clue what that is. Maybe you do. But at least to me, this isn't anything that's on my radar at all. So 200 for a one of one seems pretty good. Jude Auto out of 100 goes for 174. We also have a Luka Modric for 174 above it. We have a Figo 1992 Calendarios SGC6 that went for 180. We'll take a peek at another one later, a PSA 9, the highest grade there is that's sold. So we'll save it for that. Maldini auto there goes for 186. Above that, we have yet another Jude, along with a sort of cutout stand-up Bobby Moore from 65 in a PSA 4. Pretty fun one there. The stand-ups are always cool. Miazza 1937 here. Decided to look this one up, PSA 2. I don't look up a ton of Miazza because it's just hard. Sometimes you don't find any comps, but on this one we found a decent amount. I'm always interested how sort of the Italian space is doing, because I know it's pretty prevalent in terms of pre-modern collecting, because Italy was really good. And price-wise, I mean, not bad. This one goes for 186. I guess before 216 was the last price, so nothing all too crazy. An Eye Appeal one went for 234 as well. Before that, another Eye Appeal for 288. So it does seem like they're coming down a little bit, but nothing too crazy. Then we have an Orange out of 25, Cristiano Ronaldo, the man, going for nearly 200. An SGC 10, as it's well documented. I'm not a huge fan of modern, but I mean, this is always one that's at least stood out to me in terms of aesthetics. I'm not saying it's, a great card, but it doesn't look terrible and at least stands out to me. But at the same time, I don't know, the background's a little weird with all of the different colors, and with orange, it's just kind of a big clash, but, 200 for a 10 doesn't seem crazy. We then have 192 on this Monday Chrome of Messi in a PSA 10. We have a Franz Beckenbauer auto that goes for 198. He signed a lot, but having a license release like this and sticker auto, that doesn't seem anything too crazy in terms of price. Above that, we have a Frankie de Jong Kaboom PSA 10 for 200. We've seen a fair few of those lately. A BGS 9 Ronaldo from 2006. Want to take a peek at this, because, I mean, we see them a lot, but we don't really look at the pricing. But in terms of this one, it actually sold fairly well. The price below that is really good at $271 on a best offer. Best offers are always going to do more than auctions, at least for the most part. That's just sort of how that works. But if we look before this, 144, 128. And yeah, I mean, some pretty low prices back here, 180. To get back to the 200, 300 range, that was sort of where it was at in 2022 when I looked back earlier at some of the prices. So seems like a fairly good sale there, and maybe a good sign. I'm not too sure. You'd have to look at more grades to be able to get a better understanding, but at least looks good there. There was a 79 crack Maradona and a 1.5. This is sort of the Estampas lookalike from a year later. Goes for 198. I like the blue border. Above that, another nice looking one here with the 65 Pele Velita back. PSA 3 goes for 198. We have an auto Puskás that goes for 210. And then we have this Cruyff that goes for 210 as well. This is an Eye Appeal sticker, top 15%. I was going to say, I mean, when I looked through the first time, 210 for a PSA 2 seemed like a pretty good price. But with the Eye Appeal sticker, it's harder to judge. But honestly, a lot of the 1s and 2s, especially nowadays, look pretty good because the back damage isn't all that prevalent. Sometimes they miss it entirely, but you never know. Then above that, we have a Garrincha EDI from 62. Very nice looking one there. Gets a pretty good price. PSA 3 goes for 210. The last PSA, what was it, 4? Yeah, 2 PSA 4s earlier this year went for 108 and 105. So pretty good price there. There was a raw that did 75 on eBay and looks like this. So I guess, if you go off that comp, then this isn't crazy. But if you go off earlier comps, it's a pretty high price. I'm pretty sure I lost some of these PSA 4s back here, so I'm not all that enthused about this 3 going for double, but, is what it is. We'll see if that sticks. I did look at it. Looks like a 3. I don't think it looks significantly better, but it is a nice looking Garincha. Next to it, take your pick here between these 2 base cards. I think it'd be a pretty easy choice, at least for me, but to each their own. Above that, we have a 57 Hispano-Americana here of Luis Suarez. This is a PSA 8, which is super high grade, and why we're not going to really be able to comp it. It is a hand-cut issue, as you can see here, so a PSA 8 might be more doable, but typically what I see on these, at least, from some other years of reference, an 8's super tough. I don't think they're that easy. Hand-cut usually gives you some leniency to be able to work with in terms of, cutting and being able to mold it how you want, but an 8 is a pretty good grade and gets a pretty good price at $216. Artigola Auto, $222. We have a 53 Tornillo Di Stefano that goes for $222 as well. This is from a cutout of, I think, like a larger sheet of both players and game photos and stuff like that, but essentially this goes for $222. I looked at comps and, this says pop 1 of 1, just one higher, which is weird to me because when I looked at comps, I thought I found a lot of PSA 2s. Yeah, there's one here. There's a 2 back here. There's a 1.5, a 1, a 1.5. I guess there was only one other 2, so never mind. But in terms of comps, basically, you can see that this 1.5 went for $207. You can see that this 2 went for $500 a little while back, and now it's going for $222, so, quite a dip there. I think there was also like a $3,000 sale on one of these, which is crazy. But yeah, of course, that was back during the madness, but now we're at $222. Then we have a 1900 Geo Smith here in a PSA 1 that goes for $222. Thanks to this listing, I actually had only now just seen Geo Smith's actual name because I've just always seen it abbreviated, but Gilbert Oswald, there you go. 47 Nanina Mazzola, black and yellow, border hand cut, CGC3 goes for $228. Phil Foden auto from 22 Merlin goes for $234. This Vidal Tinghals, I have no clue. I looked at the back. I didn't think it seemed like a rare back, but again, I keep saying I'm bad with the Tinghals backs. I have to look into them more, but I don't own any Tinghals, so I don't know from experience, but just generally what I see. This goes for $234. And when we look at comps, I have no clue where this comes from. So basically, before 26, 56, I guess 56 raw isn't bad. 35 for an SGC1, 13 for an SGC1, 12, 81 back here for a raw. But yeah, basically, I don't know. The highest sale before this was, what was that, 80, 50, something like that. This goes for $234. A 3 is a pretty good grade of Tinghals, but it's, I wouldn't say it's absolutely unheard of. 2023 Lamine Yamal auto goes for $240, next to a Jamal Musiala non-rookie that goes for $240 as well. A Zinedine Zidane Panini foot goes for $240 in a PSA 9. I took a peek at this just because you don't see it that often, at least it stood out to me. When we did take a peek though, we saw a pretty good price. Last price was $228, before that $186, and before that, and at the very bottom, if I can make this work, there we go, $132 back on January 8th, 2023. So net, almost doubling in price over the last year to 2 years, which is pretty impressive. We have a Pulisic 2017 Auto Select on-card, goes for $252. These always do pretty good numbers. Early career on-card Pulisic. Honestly, not that easy to come by, since, back in the day, 2016, 2017, a lot of that was sticker. The next sticker we have is a 1978 Baresi. I did have it hearted because I had bought the prior one, so I was interested where it went. I bought the prior one for like $130 or something like that. This goes for $252, which was a shock to me. Although at the same time, when you looked at eBay, there was 3s and 4s selling for almost $100 at times. So I felt like, the 7 was a low value. I was maybe willing to pick up another one if it went near the same price, but it went nowhere near, so $252 there. Pretty good price, and, I feel like a good sign when I bought the Baresi. I was just sort of looking at it as one of the best defenders of all time. Pretty good grade, not the highest, but I think it's like a top 20, top 30 grade maybe. But yeah, nice one there, and I always enjoy the background on that. Just such a lovely looking one. Above that, we have an Ademir PSA 2 that goes for $252. That sort of seemed like the ballpark. I thought around about $300 was a comp, but a little lower. This 26 Luis Monti goes for $252. That one, at least compared to what we've seen in the past, was a pretty low sale. It also is tough because you haven't had a sale in almost a year and a half. I guess in a way that could be good, but this Luis Monti on Golden a year and a half ago did $720. This one does $252 and a little bit higher of a grade, although I guess it's PSA versus SGC, so maybe it's the same depending on how you view it. But there was also one back in 2022 that sold for $800. So I think I saw another one in the Discord, the Vintage Discord, link down below if you like vintage or pre-modern or any of that jazz. But there was one that sold in like 2021 also for like $500. So this is one of the lower prices I've seen. Fairly relevant player as well in an early issue. We have a 62 Pele Gazzetta. I'm guessing this is another vinyl cutout. I don't know, to be honest. I'm not that into the weeds in 60s Pele, but PSA 8, high grade of course, but goes for $264. 4. Not a whole lot else to say there. Beyond that, this Figo seemed like a fair price, or at least an attainable price. I mean, an out of 10 Eminence Figo for $288 doesn't seem anything crazy, especially when you got all the Topps Dynasty boxes being opened, where this is an equivalent card of something you might get out of there, and those are like $2,000 to $3,000. Silver Prism Messi PSA 10 goes for $288. Wanted to take a peek at that because that's, a relevant card, at least to me. $288, I don't own it. I just think it's a cool card. Just clarifying. But $288 on this one. Last sale was $190, which is a super strong sale. There hasn't been a sale in a month. One of the things I wonder sometimes is, are these cards helped by Toll and Murzond or Murozond? I've never even looked at the name fully, but both of these guys are just massive shilling accounts. I don't know if they shill or the people they can sign for. I don't know how it works, but these guys have stuff relisted. I would say like at least 25% of the time. I think that's kind. It might be more. As you'll see here, a couple sold, 214, 210. Presumably one of them went unpaid. Back here with Toll, you see 3 more listings. That's actually 2 different cards. I checked earlier. But point being, I don't know if like some of these shill sells, I think some of these shill bids that don't get paid but then rerun and get paid near the same, I think it helps cards in general sort of, get higher prices just because people see higher prices. I don't think it's the most organic thing, and I do worry about it, of course, but seemingly here, it's, got this up to $288. I do think that this type of stuff, Silver Prism PSA 10 Messies are going to be pretty cool in the future, especially, I guess it depends how 2026 goes. Even if there's only one more World Cup that he's in with World Cup Silver Prisms, I don't think it's going to ruin anything. But at the end of the day, it is a standout parallel. Like, when you have so many different parallels from 14, 18, 22, etc., silver is one consistent theme. So Zidane sticker auto for $300. I think there's a Beckham. Yeah, Beckham right above it. Those are 2 guys that, $300 autos. Back in the day, you couldn't have imagined that, but here we are. A couple Messi's, 2010 PSA 10. These, again, I think are falling at least. I generally remember them at $400 to $500. This is $300. 312 on this Ronaldinho Messi Icons PSA 10. Yaya Toure for $324. Doesn't seem like a crazy price, but a good one if you're a Yaya collector. 82 PSA 7 Maradona. These have dipped a little bit, I would say, the Maradona World Cup stickers, just generally from what I've seen. But at the same time, they were and are still up a ton from pre-boom because World Cup stickers were fairly plentiful. So pre-boom, they weren't all that coveted, but now they are, even more coveted because people like the Panini stickers, and they're a little bit harder to find now than they were back in the day. I say hard to find as if, they're really hard to find, but, to get the right one, the right deal, it takes a little time, I guess. But anyways, PSA 2 record, $372. Above that, Cristiano Ronaldo Leaf. Didn't even look, honestly, at the slab. I just assumed it's Leaf. Beyond that, we have a Ben Barrick 51 issue, goes for $408. That's a pretty good price. Now, PSA 3 is probably a pretty good grade, and it's a nice-looking Ben Barrick. But we've seen a lot of early 50s Ben Barrick on PWCC, and it rarely gets that high of a price, so that's a pretty good one. 97 Thierry Henry PSA 9 for $432. Above that, we have an Mbappe Green Orange Wave, everyone's favorite, goes for $456. Then we have the Bernabeu, which this has been one interesting sort of theme, is that someone must have graded like 5 to 10 of these, I think closer to 10, but maybe 5, and they've been bringing one to auction essentially every week for the last couple months. Slowly getting higher and higher grade, but each time they essentially sell for what the first price was. So the first one to go, I think, was $500 for an authentic, then it was like $500 for a 1, then it was $500 for a 1.5, then a 2, then a 2.5, now we're at 3s, there's another 3 next week. It says there's 2 higher, so I'm guessing there's going to be a 3.5 and maybe a 4 at some point, I don't know. Maybe the seller might even want to keep 1 or 2, I'm not sure. But, just something to look out for if you're interested. 2022 Blue Wave Artigola Auto goes for $468. Up in this row, we have a Kaboom Holland PSA 10, PSA 9 actually, that goes for $468. Same price on the 78 Maradona Crack. This is about what you'd expect, 4, 5, maybe 600 at times, depending, but not the best centering, but still a pretty nice looking one. I think the colors and registration are all right from here. I did lose this. I didn't go all the way as high as this sold for, but on the last day, it was at like $120 or something, so I took a decent stab at it. This is the blue and red Dino Zoff, and the blue and red is the most rare of the 70 backs. We have seen a decent amount of Pele's come out the last year or two, but that's sort of going to happen over time. Of course, even more will as time goes on, but just generally looking, I was looking at the multiple between blue and red for Pele and his more common backs, and typically the blue and red get 3 to 5 times as much in terms of price compared to the more common backs, and the Dino Zoff PSA 8, the more common backs go for like 120, 150, 175. So this feels like a fairly low price, at least based on the multiple, but how much do you believe in the multiple, how much do you care, especially, not on a Pele figure. It's all up to interpretation. I thought this was a good deal, a little lower. I still think it's a decent deal of $500, but yeah, PSA 8's really tough on these stickers. I think I was looking through all the red and blues, and I think an 8's basically the top of all the ones graded, so seemingly a pretty good sticker there. We have a 2023 Lamine Yamal auto. Again, I think both of these now have gotten rerun. There was one that sold really high and then had to get rerun, and then after that there was one that sold, I think this is the one that sold secondly, but I don't know. Goes for $528. Do what you want with it. We have a Messi Icons patch that's in a PSA 9. Goes for $528. And then you also have a Thierry Henry, which I haven't seen many of these, just because honestly they don't sell that often in mid-grade, so you don't see these prices realized, but that's a pretty low price. I mean, do I think it's unfair? I don't think so necessarily, but I do think it's low. If we look here, I guess this was labeled as a 1997, which maybe that does something to it. PSA slabs it as a 97 when it's a 96-97. I don't know if that pushes people away, but I mean, the last 6 did $830, so it doesn't seem anything crazy compared to that. If we do look before, though, what was that, 2023? I guess a 9 went for 6. If we look backwards, though, I mean, yeah, 6s have been going for, $800, $900, $1,200. They have been slowly going down. A PSA 5 in close to the end of 2022 did sell apparently for $2,000, which is sort of what I was thinking. These seem like they've dropped a lot. I have sort of thought that maybe they were overpriced for a while, just because when you compare Henry to, again, other stickers, I always compare to the Ronaldo sticker. I know there's fakes out there and that's not a great comparison, but at the same time, if an Henry at that time in a PSA 5 was like $2,000, and at the same time a Ronaldo in say like a PSA 7 was like $2,000, which one would you rather have? I mean, to me, it's every day of the week Ronaldo. But at these prices, I do think this is more approachable. And I do wonder, we've seen the stars of Europe, Russian and Spanish Henrys, doing really good as of late, which is just sort of confusing when these are not doing that good. I know that these are sort of the staple and the one that everyone thinks of, so maybe people that bought these initially are going away from them. But at least to me, I'm not an Henry guy, but if I was to buy an Henry, this would be the one without any shadow of a doubt. So maybe there's something there. I mean, a PSA 5 is obviously not going to be a great grade, but they aren't all that common in terms of what we've been seeing. We'll see another rare sticker later. Above that, we have a Zlatan, also preluding there. We have a PSA 10 Kaboom that goes for $540. A David Beckham out of 99 historic ticket auto goes for $564. Matthias Sulik 101 finest goes for $630. Above that, this was a pretty good price. I think I only found like one comp of this, and it might have been like $50 to $100 for a more beaten up copy. So $630 isn't, I guess, out of this world, but it does seem like a really strong price for Kubala, someone that you don't see that high in these auctions that often, but this is such a good looking one. You got the Spanish kit on. It looks absolutely amazing. Get $630, really good price, pop one and higher. I thought this Ronaldo was a little low. I did have a heart on it. I'm not really like a red out of 10 guy, but I know it's everyone's thing, so I was like, I'll keep an eye on it, see what happens. I thought this sold fairly light. In my head, I was thinking 750 is like the low price, maybe 1,000 is like the comp, and it went for 660 in a 10, which is, maybe I give SGC too much credit for a 10, but if you assume this is a 9, I mean, what is this, a $200, $300 card? I mean, it doesn't sound right to me, but maybe it is. Now, I do know it is Topps Chrome. It's not Topps Chrome Sapphire. It's Ronaldo on Juve. It's all these things, but it still is a Topps Chrome Red out of 10 Ronaldo. So then next to it, we have a Kaboom PSA 10 Vinny that goes for $720. Above that, a Kylian Mbappe PSA 9 Red that goes for $810. Again, sort of just a question mark in my head. You can have the Mbappe Red in a PSA 9 or the Ronaldo Red in an SGC 10. To me, it seems like the Ronaldo's a gimme, but again, Juve, this is PSG, this is also earlier career, but just Mbappe's going to have so many cards, man, so many cards for so long, like he's got so many parallels, how can you not pick that one? I'd be interested though what you think. Again, even over this, I feel like this Ronaldo is easily better than all these other cards. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, you can yell at me in the comments if you bought these other cards and think differently. I'm open to hearing people's thoughts, but a PSA 9 Kaboom, again, PSA 9 Kaboom or a red chrome, that's killer. Anyways, we'll keep it moving. Leaf Auto, you can go for that if you want to. I think that was 1 out of 2. Yeah. We have a 58 Bremer Pele, PSA 5 going for $930. Stevie G for $960 out of 25 flawless. Seems like a pretty good price. A patch that isn't all that impressive. A card that doesn't seem all that impressive. Although, depends on how many autos certain players have in flawless. Some have a lot more than others, so maybe that's what's going on here. Just generally, I see a lot of other players I feel like would do higher prices that don't of better cards, and that, at least to me, sort of stands out. PSA 9 Cristiano Ronaldo, Messi, Messi silver matchups goes for $9.90. Took a peek at this. We have a fancy graph, one that's not fully in the screen, but we'll try. There you go. It's not great. It's not great. Let's just say that. Yeah, so all time, this is what it looks like. Probably not great, considering, we're basically taking the peak of the market for one of the most hyped cards in the market at the time. So it is what it is. But over the last year, still down 10%, but kind of coming up, maybe. One of the lowest sales was what, 835, 840. This is now nearly 1,000. And then if we go over 2 years, it's again down a little bit, but I mean, since February or summer of last year, it's been about even, so not terrible, I would say. I don't know, it suffered a bit. I mean, it's still $1,000 for a PSA 9 silver. So at the same time, there has to be perspective. At one point, it was probably a bit too hot. Maybe it's too cold now. I don't know. But at the same time, it's not a numbered card. There's lots of numbered cards out there for this. I would say for this card at this point in time, it's probably not the best in the sense that the fan base of both are, sort of battling it out. You can say Messi already won if you want. And obviously, the World Cup helped a lot. But at the same time, Ronaldo's won a Euro. Ronaldo winning a Euro for Portugal, in my opinion, is more impressive than winning a World Cup with Argentina. You can debate that. But my argument would be Portugal's never getting close to trophies for the most part. They've done it once. But most of the time, they're never getting close to trophies. And then Argentina, they've won 2 World Cups before Messi. That's not game-changing. Yes, it's great. Yes, I think they're both great. I think eventually this card will be seen as great. But I think at this moment in time, a lot of people are either on one side or the other, and so they're duking it out rather than just saying they're both great, which is the real answer. But nonetheless, this was the Figo we were talking about earlier. Goes for $1,020. We did take a peek, and essentially this was the highest price, but it didn't get a good multiple over the other PSA 7s that have sold. As you can see here, we've seen $630, $750, and a $810 sale for a couple PSA 7s and a PSA 5. So again, this is sort of an example of if you're buying, say, in the PSA 5 through 8 range, thinking you have the highest grade, there can always be a 9 or a 10 that comes out. And when it comes to market, rarely ever does it get the multiple that it should get. And so if you're willing to wait it out, or alternatively, you could buy into this and then go sell your 7 and get this at a, seemingly discounted price. Depends how you see it, but yeah, $1,020 here. A good price in the sense it's an all-time high, but at the same time, not good when you consider a PSA 7 sale for $810 and a PSA 7 sale for $630, both last year. This Jude, I thought this was weird at first. I thought it was mistyped because it says out of 60 gold refractor auto, but it's actually out of 60. I looked it up because, I like modern. I like modern a lot, but I wanted to give it a peek, see what it's doing. It's down a little bit, but, when you look back, it's sort of the story you'd expect to see, right? So this one is at $1,050. Before this, you have $1,250 on Probstein, and then before that, you had $1,500 on an eBay best offer, okay? As we go earlier than that, you can see last year, sort of before the season or going into the season, $1,300 on this one. And then, all the way back in the day, I guess, 1,000 here. You also have 560 right here. So a 560 sale before last year, and now it's at 1,500 or 1,000, which seems down, but it's still double what it was before last season started. So it all depends where you take it. But as you can see, at least with this card for Jude, it was sort of, a down before last season and up during last season, which makes sense given the season he had, and sort of coming back to earth now. But I do wonder how it plays out because, having those two really high-profile attacking players is obviously going to take away from your hobby stardom. How much so, I guess, will be left to be seen. I think if he had some good accomplishments for England, or does going forward, that could help him stand out a little bit. But accomplishing stuff with England, always a heavy task, so we'll see. But yeah, I mean, a lower price than it has been, but also a decent price compared to the year and a half before. So the next two, we have a Zlatan PSA 6 2000 sticker, and this is one you barely ever see. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd seen one. When this came up, I was sort of starstruck by it. I was like, man, it has been ages. And looking at sales comps, it really has. There's been 2 to sell in what's been almost the last 11 months. This PSA 6 went for $1,200. This one last night goes for $1,100. It's not the best sale, but at the same time, nothing egregious. But yeah, if you look back, I mean, I was just sort of surprised. Last year, there was a lot of these selling, probably about 1 a month. And I guess that's if you include team, which you probably shouldn't. So maybe a little less than 1 a month. Even in 2022, a decent amount of sales. And then this year is just totally stopped. So we've got 2 this year, which hasn't been great. Doesn't bode well if I want one of these in the future, which I do, but hopefully it plays itself out well. Moving above that, some pretty good prices up here. This is a 1970 Bobby Charlton. This is a PSA 7 blue-red back. To me, this was a really strong price, at least when I first saw it, because The Pele from 1970 goes for, in a 7, I think the last comp was like 3,800 or something. So a Charlton going for, almost a third of the price of the Pele, to me, is a pretty good sale. I didn't really like the cut on this. I did notice it. I mean, it's hand cut, so like, you can do what you want with it, obviously. I don't know how small you could go. Like, could you just do his head? I don't know. But you can get it down to here. It doesn't look the most appealing, and I'd probably rather just have a lot of the other edges cut off, to be honest. Maybe you could even improve this if you just made the borders look better. But yeah, it goes for $1,200. The blue-red back doing its thing. A pretty impressive sale there, I will say. Pop one of one and higher. Next, we have a 1963 Velita back Eusebio PSA 6 that goes for $1,500. Took a peek at this in terms of sales comps. It was down a little bit from the last sale, but nothing too crazy. It does have an eye appeal sticker, but it's only top 30. Seemed like a fairly decent price, but at the same time, the 63 Calciatore Eusebios have been slowly sort of dropping across the board. Depending on the grade in the back and the color, you might be able to find some that have held up, but generally speaking, most of them have fallen a little bit, and this one seems to be in that same category. Next, we have a 2019 Flash Footballers Auto for Holland that goes for $1,530. Rookie year Holland, but not one that people are probably all too familiar with, but it is fairly rare, as you can see. Above that, a Lamine Yamal, if you want to go the other way with it. I will say, like, that's just sort of the example I would give in terms of the Yamal hype and just how high it is. Like, Holland's doing everything you could ever ask out of a prospect, and no one really cares. Meanwhile, Lamine Yamal wins a trophy, starts playing for Barca, gets some assists, some goals, and everyone's going crazy. And just, again, makes me wonder, like, what will he have to do to sustain everyone's excitement for him forever? Like, you just can't do it, to be honest. It's impossible. Holland's the proof of that, because he's doing what you would want him to do, and no one cares. Some people care, but the greater hobby hasn't really taken notice for some reason or another. 55 ONB Pele goes for $1,600, 80 in a PSA Authentic grade. We did have some comps on this. They're fairly rare, but you see them come up every now and then. So, a PSA 1 MK lasted $2,800. I will say a pretty good looking one. Obviously there's some marks over the face. I think that's what they're going with the MK, but it looks really good. Other than that, $23,000 sale last year. I don't know where this came from. Maybe it's because it's a 2-pop, probably one of one, none higher, I would guess. But yeah, before that, I guess a 1 last year did 10K, but then there's a 1 doing, $1,800. So I don't know. I know that's a bad looking one. It's got, poop stains all over it or whatever, but this one's got one on the top left, so I don't know. The comps are all over, but seems like a low price, but not a terrible price, I guess, given that it has a nice little chunk out of it. Then we have a PSA 4 78 Maradona, goes for $1,830. Again, probably about the price you'd expect. Pretty good focus, pretty good colors. Honestly, pretty good across the board, I would say, for a 4. Looks really, really nice. Gets a pretty good price. In my head, I had around, $1,750 to $2,000 on this, and that's about what it did. And we're just now breaking into the top 9, so pretty big weekly here. We start with an Erling Haaland out of 250 purple that goes for $1,800. Again, sort of an example of people not really caring, but yeah, again, $2,000 actually is a pretty good price. If we look back at comps, I don't have them anymore. I do actually. There they are. So this one goes for $1,860. Before this, $1,600, so up a little bit. But if we start going back, yeah, it's not going to look good. And that's what I mean. Like, Haaland gets the move to City, and his prices are in the multiple thousands, many multiple thousands. And now, we're at $1,500 almost, nearly $2,000 after he's accomplished everything he has. So I know the market sort of reset during this time, which doesn't allow for as much growth in prices. So that's definitely going to play a factor. But for how much people are chasing other things, it's just kind of crazy to me. This Charlton out of 5 flawless finishes goes for nearly $2,000. Pretty good price. Essentially anything Bobby Charlton from these types of sets is going to do like $500 to $1,000, so a pretty coveted set like Flawless Finishes. Out of 5, doing $1,860 with the World Cup trophy being held up. Remay trophy if you want to be specific. But yeah, goes for $1,860 there. Pretty good price and a fun card to see. 101 Maradona goes for $2,600. Not my choice for a Maradona auto, but at the same time, I do sort of like the quantity of Maradona and Pele autos out there that are like licensed stickers and stuff like that. I think it's a good amount, but I don't think it's egregious. And so I think it's at a nice little sweet spot. This Lampo Calcio Pele 8.5, I didn't think we were going to find any comps for this because it's a pop one of one and higher, but it has sold twice before. So here we are. The 2 prior prices were $4,500 near about the 2022 World Cup, and then $3,900 a little bit later, just a few months later. Don't know if that had to resell or not. That would be interesting. Nonetheless, this one goes $500 cheaper than those, and seemingly, keeps on dropping a little bit. In my opinion, one of the better looking 60s designs. I just think in general, I love the flags on the outside. I love the blue background. The colors just pop, especially on this 8.5. Back is blank, looks good, but yeah, a pretty good price despite it being low. It's still 3,500. Next up, we have a 2022 Superfractor Lionel Messi Renaissance. I had to kind of like go in there. You can see the sort of circly swirls in there if you go take a peek, but from here it's hard to really tell. It goes for 3,600 though, which seems like a pretty good price. Hard to always tell with how many one of ones come out and all that type of stuff, but yeah, a PSG one of one Messi. I know one of ones are always going to have their own sort of thing, but I would be interested in terms of how many one-on-ones exist for someone like Messi already. I don't think it's bad compared to like other sports, but just having a number on it would be cool, but I don't want to go and figure that stuff out. Then we have a 2002 Cristiano Ronaldo Mega Crash in a SGC 8.5 going for nearly 5K. Not a whole lot to say there. I think those have been doing okay, but you're not going to find tons of comps with an SGC 8.5, so really couldn't do much there. And that takes us into the top three, so some pretty big cards this week. To start, we have a PSA 4 Aquarella. I did take a peek at this one to see where it has been, and yeah, this graph isn't all that bad, I would say. For soccer, this is probably a pretty good one, and it almost matches what the index looks like in the sense that, it runs up 10x, 15x, whatever it is, and then it comes back down maybe a third, a half of the way, and then settles somewhere in between. Has it settled? I don't know. The last couple sales have been really weird. I guess this full year of sales have been weird because it went really low, then sort of shot back up, and then has been coming back lower. This is one of the more plentiful Pele rookies, so it's always sort of held up well in that regard. People sort of expected this to come back down maybe a bit sooner because of the pop, but it also looks really good, which is always going to be sort of the helping hand for this one. I guess it did decent for what is also an older cert. I didn't really take that into account. Next, we have a Cristiano Ronaldo Soul of the Game. So I did look up some of these comps, so we can just talk about them. The last comp I saw, and I don't know if it got relisted. I saw it was relisted, but it might have sold again. It was a Burbank Soul of the Game Flawless Ronaldo that's out of 15. It's ruby. It looks exactly the same, just red, and essentially the auto went off card, and it had sold for about the same. So at least to me, an out of 25 with the auto fully on card is probably nearly equal to an out of 15 with the auto off the card, just a little. The patches were similar. I will say there was a gold 9.5 out of 10 that did like 5,500 on Golden earlier this year. So just based on the comps, that seems like it was quite the steal, and it seems like these are holding up pretty well, I would say. For me, the Soul of the Game from Flawless has always sort of stood out as being, pretty different and, uniquely soccer sort of card, so I do like it from that regard. But yeah, pretty good price there at 5,300. And then topping it off, we have not seen one of these top off an auction ever, but we see it this go around, and that's a 1962 Mira Mondiale Di Calcio Pele PSA 3.5. This is a really rare 60s Pele. As you can see here, a really nice looking one as well. Brazil flag, a nice looking photo, great colors. 62 World Cup going on down there. Just a great looking Pele. Goes for 7,200, pop one of one, none higher. And yeah, when we go to look up comps, we're going to find two, and that's going to be it. So essentially, let's just go from highest price, and that will give us what we need. So yeah, impossible to find here. This sells in 2022 for 11,000 in a PSA 2. It looks like a PSA 2, fairly beaten up, but then another 2 sells just, 5 months later or so for a few $1,000s less. So this was early 2022, which I will say in terms of vintage, like the notable cards that you would imagine in vintage probably peaked in 2021. These that you had to dig a little bit deeper into were probably peaking in 2022. So I feel like these are peak prices that you're seeing for this card. There's not a lot of other comps to go off of, so, seemingly a pretty big dip from there for a 3.5 to go nearly the same price. You would expect a 3.5 probably to do double, so maybe these are down 50%. I don't know. On a card or a sticker that sells only 3 times, you can't really know, but just based off what we're seeing, it would seem like these are maybe down 50%, which from the peak isn't terrible, but at the same time, it's, nothing to scoff at, surely, and also really cool to be able to see this Pele go in a 3.5 grade, which is, as we can see, pop one of one, none higher, and a fun way to end this weekly. So take a look at next week, see what we got. I did already do a little peruse, and usually I like to do this just off the cuff, but yeah, we have a ton of 71 bis at the very start. We have some more Messi beneath it. We have a Titularis PSA 4 Pele going on there, a PSA 8.5 of this R9, which this had sold earlier this year, and it seemingly had sold for a really high price. I think it was like 10K, so it's interesting to see that go again. Next to it, a Di Stefano auto over here. We then have a blue treble Mbappe, a couple more on-card vintage items, some more Messi, Ronaldo, whatnot, some kabooms. I think that's a PSA 8 R9 rookie, which is pretty good. and surely some fun ones mixed in between there. So hopefully you're looking forward to it, as am I. As always, if you enjoyed the video, do make sure to leave a like. I'd appreciate it greatly. Anything you want to tell me or others, would love to see it down below in a comment. Something you snagged, maybe something that sold high or low. Let me know what you thought. And if you want to see more videos like this as soon as I go live, make sure to subscribe. But with that said, hopefully you have a wonderful day, and peace.